Okay, talk about a really dumb business decision. No, not ours, but Russia's. Russia sold Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million. That won't even buy you a house in Hollywood. Okay, the sale was a while ago. It was back in 1867. But still, it was so smart of the United States and so dumb of Russia to sell it. And it's not just an acre or two they sold us. Alaska is the size of 19 other United States combined. It's twice the size of Texas. And get this, Alaska has only 740,000 residents. That is what Seattle, Washington has. Just one city has here in the United States. So why am I mentioning this? Because President Trump has his eyes on Alaska. Alaska is going to play a big role in Trump's Golden Dome for America plan.
Alaska is involved, and Alaska is a big part of it because locationally they're sort of perfect. I think that's your first line of defense in certain instances.
Speaking of Alaska's geographic location, I should note, though, that at its closest point to Russia, Alaska from Russia is less than 3 miles, and the United States Adak Naval Base is about 800 miles. Alaska's U.S. Senator, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Dan Sullivan, joins me. Good evening, sir. And why do we need the Golden Dome?
Well, good evening, Greta. And, I was in the Oval Office yesterday with the president when he was talking about the Golden Dome and talking about Alaska's key role in that. Look, it's a great vision of President Trump. And by the way, it's continued leadership by President Trump. He was working on big missile defense during his first term. Of course, Joe Biden didn't do anything in this area. And now, during the second term, President Trump has laid out this vision of a Golden Dome that can protect all of America through layered defenses, starting, of course, with Alaska, our ground-based missile interceptors that are based there already, our radar systems based throughout our state, including the Aleutian Islands. But then this vision, which the Congress fully supports, is going to move forward into space. So it's going to have a space-based sensors, space-based interceptors, and an open architecture that brings data and new software to bring it all together. It's a great vision. We had a big day in the Oval Office. Alaska is going to play a big role, but I will tell you, President Trump's leadership is driving this, and it's something that no other country can do, and we're going to do it.
All right, well, it's got a huge price tag. President says $150 billion. I read that's $850 billion over 10 years, but this is Washington where we play with a lot of numbers. But China sees this as an offensive military action by us, or not defensive. Is it offensive or defensive?
It's defensive, right? And if you listen to President Trump yesterday, he said exactly what this is. It builds on the vision that Ronald Reagan put forward during his term. It's just that during the Reagan administration, we didn't have the technology to do this. Now we do have the technology to do this, and that's why it's so important that we should, but it's also very defensive. Look, the reason China and Russia are so upset about this is that it's the reason the Soviet Union was upset about what Ronald Reagan was trying to do in the 1980s, because they can't do this. This is going to make Americans safer, and when you have the ability to do that and the president's focused on it, I think that's what a smart commander-in-chief does.
Is the technology profoundly different than the Iron Dome in Israel, which detects by radar a missile coming in and then it shoots up and gets the missile? Is this technology different?
It's different in that it's obviously much bigger. It covers a much greater area. You know, that's one area that I've worked on in the Senate is actually the cooperation between the United States and Israel. With regard to the Iron Dome, the U.S. played an important role in the technology and the research that went into Israel's Iron Dome. The Israelis came actually, Greta, to Alaska and tested elements of the Iron Dome in Kodiak Island a couple years ago. But this is much bigger, and I will tell you the big difference is it's not just the ground-based missile interceptors that we have in places like Alaska that can take out intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's the space layer, and that's really different. That's important. And the space layer in the Golden Dome is going to be not only detecting missiles and detecting threats, but intercepting them, shooting them down from space. That's something different. That's a much more significant technology. But we have the capacity to do it, and that's what it's exciting, and we need to do it.
All right, well, obviously I want to protect the United States. I want to be safe myself. But the other thing too is I don't want to rattle the cage of China, so then you get in basically into an arms race, for lack of better terms, with Russia and China over this. Because the thing that bothers me more than that, I'm less worried about missiles coming in than I am of gain of function viruses. Because that is, you can sneak it in on the next, United Airlines or American Airlines flight in from overseas, and you can take out an entire population. And so while we're spending all these billions of dollars, that I worry about China and their labs or anybody else.
Well, look, the bio threats that we have are very real. And, so I would agree with you on that. But look, we're a great nation, and we can focus on different threats at different times. But there's no doubt that the threat of bio-terrorism is something we got to focus on. But the threats in terms of what the Golden Dome is going to focus on, they've increased. And what do I mean by that? It used to be just intercontinental ballistic missiles that we were worried about. Now it's hypersonics that China's done a pretty darn good job at. Now it's cruise missiles. And to be honest, right now, Greta, without this Golden Dome, we don't have any defenses on hypersonics. We don't have any defenses on cruise missiles. And so I think it's the responsible thing to do when you see new threats developing, and we have those new threats, to take action against them. That's what the president is doing. That's what we're doing here in the Congress. We already have in the budget reconciliation a down payment of the Golden Dome for about $25 billion in the bill we're working on right now. And I am working on legislation that we're introducing soon with Senator Kramer that we briefed the president on, the Golden Dome legislation to make sure this is embedded in the law. And we're going to be introducing that soon. So you have the Congress backing this initiative and leadership by the president to address new threats. And they're out there, and I think that's what a responsible leader should do, and that's what the president's doing.
Senator, thank you very much. I hope you come back next time. Let's talk about how people come up with these numbers of how the cost is, who's putting the price tags on us. We'll talk about that next time. Senator Dan Sullivan from the great state of Alaska. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greta. I look forward to seeing you in Alaska again.
Yeah, I'd love that.